Your face can tell many stories, but does your facial structure hold secrets to your ancient ancestry, from high cheekbones to a broad jawline? Well, in this video we're going to look at the fascinating links between ancient ancestry and modern faces. Now in general there are 7 different types of face shapes. Oval, round, square, oblong, which is also sometimes known as rectangle, diamond, heart and triangular. And some of these shapes are associated with people from certain regions of the world. For instance, an oblong face shape often conveys maturity and elegance, and is frequently seen in Scandinavian populations. A round face, on the other hand, gives a more youthful, soft appearance. This is common in East Asian populations as well as some Celtic groups, such as the Irish, yet there is plenty of variation within these groups as well. Now it's important to note in general that facial structure is highly polygenic, with hundreds of genetic variants going into tiny influences in facial measurements. Various other factors are also involved in facial structure, from age to weight. But what impact has ancient ancestry had on modern faces? And please let me know your ancestry in the comments below. Well, let's start with the Neanderthals, the impact of the Neanderthals on modern faces. Now around 2% of the genome in most non-Africans comes from the Neanderthals, due to interbreeding roughly around 50,000 years ago. While the percentage is small, specific gene variants inherited from these archaic humans still shape key aspects of our biology, including our faces. Neanderthals had a robust, cold-adapted facial anatomy. Their noses were large, tall and broad, likely evolved to warm and humidify cold, dry air. This was useful given where they lived, from the Atlantic coast of Western Europe to the Altai mountains of southern Siberia. They also had strong brow ridges, large jaws lacking a chin, a forward projecting mid-face, and their skulls were long and low. This is different in many ways to Homo sapiens, of course. We evolved flatter faces, smaller jaws with chins, and rounder skulls. Yet despite many physical differences, interbreeding between Neanderthals and modern Homo sapiens has passed on genetic variants that are still present in some people today. Though many Neanderthal genes were eventually lost, others, especially those advantageous for survival in Eurasia, persisted. A 2023 study published in Communications Biology found that one of the clearest examples of Neanderthal influence is in nose height. This study identified a gene region called ATF3 on chromosome 1. This was inherited from Neanderthals in some people, and it is associated with taller noses, with individuals carrying this variant showing increased nasal height from bridge to base. This trait likely offered a cold climate advantage by conditioning inhaled air, allowing us to regulate the temperature and humidity of the air we breathe in. And this leads us nicely on to the relationship between climate and nose shape and nose height, which does often vary because of climate. This is because an important function of the nose and nasal cavity is to condition air before it reaches the lower respiratory tract. A 2017 study published in PLOS Genetics looked at the relationship between the human nose and climate adaptation. They found that in general, the width of the nares or nostril is correlated with temperature and absolute humidity, but not with relative humidity. We conclude that some aspects of nose shape may indeed have been driven by local adaptation to climate. They did add that the evolution of the human nose was very complex and involved many more factors than climate, including sexual selection and genetic drift. Yet climate does seem to play a role. Why is this though? Well, this study went on to add that narrow airways in cold, dry climates might allow better conditioning by increasing the turbulence in inspired air as it reaches the turbinates, thereby facilitating contact with the nasal mucosa, with the shape of the nose also important. In general, narrow or taller noses are often more common in colder, drier regions, like Northern Europe. Wider noses, on the other hand, are prevalent in warmer, humid climates. And if we look at a map of Europe today, Northern Europeans do often have longer, narrower noses than Southern Europeans, although with plenty of variation. This potentially reflects both environmental adaptation and retained archaic DNA. So nose shape and nose height have been linked both to Neanderthals and climate, but what about other features? Well, before we look at that, if you're enjoying this video, please consider subscribing. And if you would like access to member-only videos, please consider becoming a member, either on YouTube or Patreon. I'll put the links in the description below. I just made an exclusive member-only video on Viking DNA differences recently, so please check out the links in the top of the video description below. Thank you, and now on with the video. Now, anyone that's seen any previous videos of mine in the genetic history series will know that the ancient genetics of most Europeans, essentially all Europeans, is made up of three main sources: Western hunter-gatherers, then early European farmers, and then steppe ancestry. But what did these three peoples look like, what was their facial structure like, and how did they influence modern populations, modern Europeans or people of European ancestry? Now, if we start with Western hunter-gatherers, we know that they had strong, rugged facial features. This was likely an adaptation to a physically demanding lifestyle. They largely had broad faces, prominent brow ridges, low foreheads, robust jawlines, and deep-set eyes. Early European farmers, on the other hand, had softer features. This reflected lower physical strain and dietary changes from farming, including less jaw wear from softer foods. These people had narrower faces compared to hunter-gatherers for the most part, and more delicate features in general, including smaller brow ridges and higher foreheads. Now, steppe peoples generally had traits that are associated with what's been called the corded wear look, a phenotype that later influenced both northern and eastern Europeans. They had long, narrow faces, strong cheekbones, straight noses, and deep-set eyes. Now, different parts of Europe tend to have different mixes of these three ancestral peoples, and this likely influences how different peoples of Europe look today to some extent. If you look at this table, you can see the regional breakdown. Northern Europeans tend to be more of a mix of hunter-gatherer and steppe ancestry, leading to longer faces, pronounced cheekbones, and angular jaws. Southern Europeans tend to have more early European farmer ancestry, however, often leading to softer features in general, like narrower faces and smaller jaws. There is plenty of overlap as well, but these ancient peoples explain some of the variation we see today in modern faces across the European continent. Now, genetic studies have found that another ancient human species could have influenced certain features in modern faces, namely the Denisovans. These people lived from hundreds of thousands of years ago until around 40,000 years ago, mainly in Asia. Their DNA is found in several modern human populations, primarily in parts of Asia and Oceania, as well as very low levels in many Native American people. A 2021 study published in Science Advances found that a Denisovan-derived gene variant in TBX15 influences lip shape, particularly lip thickness. This gene was found to be especially common in people with Native American ancestry. The authors of the study noted that this gene affects fat distribution in the face and body in general, likely contributing to cold adaptation in high altitude or frigid regions. We know that Native Americans are primarily descended from two peoples, ancient North Eurasians from Siberia and East Asians. And it seems that this gene variant that influences lip thickness has been passed down for tens of thousands of years in many cases, which is interesting. Now, in general, there are various factors that go into modern facial structures. If we look at jaw shape, for example, there are various key genes that control the likes of mandible development, bone density, and muscle attachment points as well. On top of pure genetic factors though, other variables also play some role in many traits developing. Higher levels of testosterone usually leads to broader, squarer jaws, for example, which are more common in men in general due to this. Strong jawlines in males are often perceived as more attractive as well to women, signalling dominance, fertility, and health. Over generations, this could have influenced this trait through sexual selection. Diet also seems to play some role as well. Hunter-gatherer diets often meant chewing tough and hard food, which required wider, stronger jaws than when farming was introduced. Now, another interesting link is actually between breathing and jaw development, namely mouth breathing and jaw development in childhood. Various studies have now linked mouth breathing with weaker jaw growth in some cases, leading to receding or bristling jaws. Nasal breathing seems to promote stronger facial bone development in general. There are also famous examples of jawlines down through history that went awry. The Habsburg jaw was famously associated with the royal Habsburg family of Europe. This facial trait became especially pronounced over generations due to extensive intermarriage and interbreeding within the dynasty, especially in the Spanish and Austrian branches. By the 16th and 17th centuries, the condition had become a visible symbol of the Habsburg lineage. Rulers like Charles II of Spain had extreme forms of this trait, as you can see in this painting. So various factors influence modern faces and the amazing variation we see today, but ancient ancestry plays a role in many cases. But what are the links between your eye colour and your ancestry? Well, to find out, please click here. Thanks for watching, please subscribe and hit the bell, and let me know your thoughts in the comments below and what your ancestry is, and I'll see you next time.